Hi, my name is Rachel Anak Bakir. Me and my group members, Miza Iwani binti Muhammad Mazuki, Ashira Nurbaya binti Abdullah, Nurul Arifah Shamimi binti Razani, and Sharifah Laila Lydia binti Wan Tamizi would like to talk about the experiment frictional force. Objective: to determine the coefficient of static friction of different surfaces.
The materials for these experiments are 50-gram and 100-gram wooden block, 10-Newton spring scale, string, and tabletop. Let's move on to the procedures. First, we have to set the apparatus as shown in figure 5.2. After that, the spring scale and the wooden block was attached with a string and was placed horizontally. A 50-gram mesh was placed on the wooden block. The spring was slowly pulled and the spring scale's reading was recorded as F once the block started to move. Step 4 until 5 were repeated for 3 trials. Another 50-gram mesh was added on the wooden block and step 5.
So I will start my part with how we conduct this experiment. So this is our result for this experiment. So the first one, we will start on the smooth surface. First result 0.40, second result is 0.45, third one is 0.45. So the first average result is 0.43. Next, we will proceed for the second attempt. The first result is 0.55. The second result is 0.50. Last one is 0.55, and the average of the second attempt is 0.53. So we will proceed to the experiment on the rough surface. The first result is 0.15. The second result also 0.15. The third result is 0.15. And the average for this first attempt is 0.15. Next, we will proceed to the second attempt. The first result is 0.50. The second and third result is 0.45. And the average for the second attempt is 0.47. Next, we will proceed to analysis. This is the sketch for free body diagram.
For the analysis 2, plot the graph of static friction force against normal force for the rubber surface and non-rubber surface. To find the normal force for the rubber surface, using the value of static friction force of rubber surface obtained in the result and the value of normal force of rubber surface obtained, start to plot the graph. This is the graph of static friction force against normal force for the rubber surface. Next, to find the normal force for the non-rubber surface, using the value of static friction force of non-rubber surface obtained in the result and the value of normal force of non-rubber surface obtained, start to plot the graph. And this is the graph of static friction force against normal force for the non-rubber surface. The analysis 3, use the gradients obtained from the graph to calculate the coefficient of static friction for each surfaces. To find the coefficient of static friction for rubber surface, we need to use the gradient in which the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Next, to find the coefficient of static friction for non-rubber surface, we need to use the gradient in which the formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. For the analysis 4, compare and discuss the coefficient of static friction is obtained. The value of the coefficient of static friction obtained for the rubber surface is larger compared to the value of the coefficient of static friction obtained for the non-rubber. This is because the non-rubber surface is a smooth surface that has very low friction, because in smooth surface there is less resistance to the movement, whereas for the rubber surface is a rough surface that have more friction, because on the rough surface there will be more irregularities. Hence, there will be high resistance to the movement of the rough surface.
Next, to answer the questions. Number 1. How can anti-lock brakes stop a car in a shorter distance than regular brakes? Anti-lock braking system, or ABS, helps cars to stop on slippery surfaces in emergency situations while still allowing them to steer the car. Regular brakes usually will lock the wheels, causing the wheels to lose traction with the road and simply slide. ABS makes it so that the wheels of the car do not lock and slide on the road. That will make the car stop quickly due to large amount of friction. Question number 2. From your experiment, which material has the highest coefficient of static friction? Does this agree with your hypothesis? What do you think determines the coefficient of static friction? From the experiment, rubber surface has the highest coefficient of static friction and it agrees with our hypothesis. I think it is the ratio of the force of friction between the object and the surfaces and the force pressing them together is what determines the coefficients of static friction. Question number 3. Once the mass begins to slide, does it move smoothly or does it undergo stop and go motion? Explain the motion. Once the mass begins to slide, it moves smoothly down the surface, and this is because an object with more mass is pulled down onto the surface with a greater force than an object with low mass. Thus, there is greater friction between the surface of the heavy object than between the light object. This is because the force of friction is directly proportional to the weight of the body.
Conclusion. The objective was achieved. Frictional force between a wooden block at rough surface on the inclined plane and the smooth surface on a horizontal was measured. And from the plot data, the coefficients of static friction was obtained.